Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. As always, I'm your host, Redbeard, and I thank you very much for joining me this evening, where we always do the very best that we can to maintain liberty and to be uncompromising in our principles. So, tonight, there's going to be quite a bit going on in the show. We're going to talk about the ceasefire or lack thereof, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And then in addition, we're going to talk about a few things happening here at home that I think are going to pique everybody's interest. I got a couple articles lined up for you guys and gals that we will kind of work our way through to kind of help root out and make sense of some of this to the best of our ability. And obviously, I'll give you my 2 cents as to what I think is going to be going on. A little bit of housekeeping before we jump into it. I'm going to be having the awesome Rebecca Whiting back on the show on Saturday. So that'll be a really good time. Hopefully, we're going to be able to have a great discussion with her again about what's going on as it pertains to everything pertaining to the U.S., Israel, Iran, potentially Lebanon, and then also possibly being able to pick her mind as to where she thinks a lot of this is going to go, what it means for us in the future, and trying to maybe suss out where the power play lies, where the power sits, if it's shifting, so on and so forth. So it should be a pretty good show. But before we get to Saturday, let's try and get through Thursday. First, happy Thursday to everybody. And let's dive into it. So obviously the big thing of the week was the very beginning of the week was essentially the elimination of an entire civilization all the way down to, well, not quite. That's I have to say I'm pretty happy that nothing came of it. It's one of those things to where I feel like it's very disconcerting anytime you have somebody that says something like that, that's in any position of power. It's quite unbecoming of the office. It's quite unbecoming, especially of the office of the President of the United States. That is not the way that we are supposed to conduct ourselves. And more importantly, I feel like there is a certain decorum, especially when it comes to foreign policy, that I feel a lot of people generally have a sense of, if that makes sense. You don't go around telling people that you're going to essentially end an entire civilization. Whether you're joking, whether you're not joking, whether you're bluffing, or whether you're being honest, it holds a lot of weight, and words have meaning, especially when you go into the political and the diplomatic sphere. There's legal weight to these types of things. And as I said on, I believe was it Monday or Tuesday? I don't remember what day it was that I kind of did an overview. It might have been Tuesday. But in the end of the day, if you or I had even done anything remotely breaching that type of behavior and projecting something like that online, pertaining to our neighbor, somebody in our neighborhood, whatever the case is, boy, you better believe that we would be sitting in a freaking prison right now. But let's look kind of towards what happened after the fact. Now, after the fact, after nothing really came about of Tuesday evening, we had this situation to where, okay, instead, we are going to do a ceasefire. Okay. And this is where I think a lot of people kind of really, I think a lot of people were left in limbo. I certainly was very skeptical of it then, very skeptical of it now. Even though I'm pretty hopeful that things eventually are going to get worked out and stuff like that. This is one of those situations that's super tenuous, right? And it's not a lost optimism. It's not a lost hope type of situation for me. But you got to have a little bit of hope that things are hopefully going to get better for, you would imagine, everybody involved. With this ceasefire, though, the big controversy is essentially, one, it seemed to be broken within like 15 minutes. But that being said, at the same time, there's an even bigger controversy around like who broke it. I remember people were celebrating, and I always hate preemption, but you have people celebrating, calling it a victory. You had Iran saying it was a victory on their side. The United States obviously saying it's a victory on their side. And you had all of these cheers and all of the celebration. But the reality of it is it's never really that easy. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of misunderstandings. There's a lot of things that I think purposely are misunderstood. And I think when we look at this particular situation pertaining to the ceasefire, one of the things that we can see that was fairly misunderstood, or perhaps willfully misunderstood, was as it pertained to Lebanon. Now, you have reports that are saying that after the ceasefire supposedly was put forth, you had Israel that had attacked Lebanon, and then you also had a situation in which, it turned out that Lebanon was supposed to be a part of that ceasefire deal. Now, I want to bring our attention over here real quick, essentially to this article first. This first article is by Dave DeCamp over at news@antiwar.com. Dave DeCamp does a lot of really great work over there, but he did an article that came out, I believe, what was it, today? And all my days blend together. Funny how that works. The U.S. knew Iran ceasefire deal included Lebanon. And that's something that's been fairly widely reported. And we'll get on to a lot of the situation pertaining to Lebanon here, but I want to focus on the ceasefire deal. So the first portion up here that I want to point out is U.S. officials were aware that a statement from Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on the U.S.-Iran ceasefire that was issued on Tuesday included a truce in Lebanon as part of the deal, according to media reports. Further down it goes, the New York Times reported that the U.S. had already seen and signed off on Sharif's statement before he posted it. The initial post included a header that said draft, Pakistani's PM message on X, causing speculation whether the statement was actually written by the U.S. through a White House, though a White House official denied that President Trump drafted it. So I think that's pretty interesting. We have a situation to where it seems like there's something in question here, which really should raise some eyebrows. Like, okay, let's take a pause here for a moment. Let's sift through all of the chaos. Obviously, the world-ending cataclysmic thing did not occur, which thank goodness it did not. But now we're on to this other thing that's fairly tenuous, and it really, a lot of people are confused as to what the heck is going on. And not shortly after that, you have chaos again, where people are saying, oh, Tel Aviv is getting pummeled by Iran. Iran is still launching missiles. What the heck is going on? It makes it, people are reporting it to obviously right away put it as like Iran broke their own ceasefire deal. What the heck is going on? Right. And so I want to kind of highlight a few things here. A diplomatic source, I'll highlight it here in blue. A diplomatic source familiar with the negotiations leading up to the ceasefire announcement told ITV that news that Iranian and Pakistani officials ended the talks with the understanding that the U.S. was aware that the truce also applied to Lebanon, contradicting claims from Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance that it did not. And we go down here further, just briefly. Vance claimed it was a misunderstanding in part of the Iranians that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and said it would be dumb for Tehran to allow the negotiations to collapse over the issue, though he also insisted the deal includes a halt to Iranian attacks on Israel and the U.S. U.S.'s Gulf allies in the region. Very interesting, right? So we're starting to see kind of this back and forth where the White House is denying, like, no, it was never part of it. And we're going to get to something here in a moment, but we're going to continue going down here. Israel not only continued attacks on Lebanon, but it also drastically escalated the bombardment, launching new military operation dubbed Operation Eternal Darkness, killing hundreds of people across the country and injuring several thousand, mind you, which I think is morally reprehensible, but we'll get to that in just a moment. According to NBC News, Trump asked the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to scale down the attack, but heavy Israeli strikes continued on Thursday. I mean, at this point, is that really a surprise to anybody? I'm not going to go on a big tirade about Israel. I think a lot of people cover Israel. Look, these people, there's the government of Israel, and I'm not going to get into the broader cultural situation because a lot of people cover that too. But in the end of the day, there's a pattern here that is created where the Israeli government doesn't care. They don't care. They don't care who's caught in the bombardment. They don't care who's killed. They don't care where it is, how it's done, whatever the case is. When you look at a place like Gaza, they flatten places. That is their MO. They flatten places. They pulverize it. It's complete. I don't care what anybody says. Like when you look at the result of these types of things, it is completely devastating, right? And as a result, you have a situation to where you have hundreds of people killed, you have thousands of people injured, and this expectation that this behavior is going to change, I think it's moronic, and I don't really think that Trump even believes that. I don't believe at all that he thinks that Netanyahu's ever going to change his way of doing things. But let's go down here a little bit further. Netanyahu's office said in a statement on Thursday that he instructed his government to open negotiations with the Lebanese government, though he also later said that the strikes in Lebanon would continue. There's no ceasefire in Lebanon. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah. Interesting. I didn't know women and children and innocent people were Hezbollah. But that seems to be their MO, is they label everybody that they end up bombarding as one group of people or another, right? With full force, and we will not stop until we restore your security. Really? So it's your job to restore their security. Is that really what this is about? Is that really what this is about? So in the end of the day, Israel starts this whole conflagration, pulling the U.S. into this war with Iran. They all of a sudden, seem to have overestimated what the capabilities, or underestimated what the capabilities of Iran was. They continue to get pummeled. Then it's like all of a sudden, you might have a few fighter sorties and stuff like that that's taking place, but then they pivot to Lebanon, right? And then all of a sudden you have the words that Trump says, ending with civilization, and then you have this whole ceasefire thing, and then you have this picture that occurs where Iran is bombarding Tel Aviv. Well, it turns out that according to a variety of sources that are out there and a variety of reports, that the bombardment of Tel Aviv was in response to Israel's continued attacks on Lebanon, which massacred people, absolutely massacred people, up to and including, and I don't have full verification, but I have heard that there were notes of potential gas in Lebanon. I believe it might have been Beirut. And so this raises a lot of questions as to what the heck is going on here. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, I believe is the way that you would say it, affirmed in a statement on Wednesday that the ceasefire must include Lebanon or deal will be off. The Iran-U.S. ceasefire terms are clear and explicit. The U.S. must choose ceasefire or continued war via Israel. I think you can kind of get the general picture of what's going on here. Needless to say, it's not good. Real quick, Ground Fog, David, Gene the Machine, thank you guys for tuning in. Hope to see a few more people trickle in here, but always appreciate the support. So we can kind of get an idea of what the general situation tends to be, right? It's pretty grim. It's a pretty grim situation. I want to see if I can find, let's see here. If I can find the file. Was it this one? I think it was this one. Okay. All right. So this was put up by Disclosed TV. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'll read it. So this was the other day. Just in, Iran Supreme National Security Council releases 10-point, which, full disclosure here, this 10-point proposal has been around for several weeks. Okay, this is not something that just came out, so I don't know if they worded it wrong or if they just, for whatever reason, thought that it was something released recently, but this is something that had been out for quite some time. Guarantees of non-aggression against Iran was number one. Number two, maintenance of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz is number two. Number three, acceptance of Iran's uranium enrichment. Number four, lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions. Number five, ending all UN Security Council and IAEA Board of Governors resolutions against Iran. Number six, reparations for Iran or to Iran for damages. Number seven, withdrawal of all U.S. combat forces from within the region. Number eight, end to the war on all fronts, including against proxies in Lebanon. Okay, that's an important one. Number nine, release of blocked Iranian assets abroad. Number 10, commitments to be formalized in binding UN Security Council resolution, turning the agreements into international legal obligations. So again, this is something that's been out here for a while. It's not brand new. It's been out for, I think, like 3 weeks now. They put out this proposal. And so this really shows what their proposal is, the demands within the proposal, the expectations. And I think it paints a pretty interesting picture as to where the Iranians are in their minds and what their expectations are. And essentially what they're willing to accept and what they're willing to agree upon moving forward. Now, I do have another image here that I want to bring up. Hopefully I can get the one that I need. Let's see. So this is a message that was put out by Trump not long ago, which I think is interesting. All U.S. ships and aircraft and military personnel with additional ammunition, weaponry, and anything else that is appropriate and necessary for the lethal prosecution and destruction of an already substantially degraded enemy will remain in place in and around Iran until such time as the real agreement reached is fully complied with. If for any reason it is not, which is highly, highly unlikely, the shooting starts. It's funny. He tried to do a Southern thing there. Are you laughing? He tried to do a Southern thing there. Bigger and better and stronger than anyone has ever seen before. Okay, this is the most retarded thing. All right, we get it. You huff your own paint. All right, we get it. It was agreed a long time ago, and despite all of the fake rhetoric to the contrary, no nuclear weapons, and the Strait of Hormuz will be open and safe. In the meantime, our great military is loading up, resting, and looking forward actually to its next conquest. Okay? I think that's crazy. And he puts at the end, America is back. I didn't realize we were a conquesting nation. I didn't realize that was a part of our Constitution. I didn't realize that was a part of our foreign policy. I was not aware that conquest was within our principles, within our law, within our values, within who we are as Americans. I was not fundamentally aware that we are supposed to be a conquesting nation. If that didn't already solidify the idea that Trump is very much a empire builder versus somebody who wants to safeguard a republic. The thing that we were designed as, the thing we were founded as, a republic, right? And what was it that Benjamin Franklin said? Well, I have a quote for you here, and you'll probably hear this quote again on Saturday, but on September 17th, 1787, at the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, a woman named Elizabeth Willing Powell asked Dr. Benjamin Franklin, well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? Franklin replied, a republic if you can keep it. If you can keep it, not if your politicians can keep it, not if your representatives can keep it, if you can keep it. And I think that's important. We have not kept our republic. And so therefore we get this type of rhetoric to where now we conquest things. This is the way that we are. We conquest things, and we have adopted much of the same rhetoric that Israel has over the last year, which I think is very, very problematic, especially when you look at the way that we conduct foreign affairs. We like to threaten, bully. Well, I shouldn't say we. Our government likes to threaten, bully, and try to push people around abroad, thinking that like, oh, there's a strength component here, right? There's a peace through strength. Okay, but that's fine. You can sit there and think that, but in the end of the day, what you end up getting is eventually more enemies because everybody ends up hating you. You have no ability to go forth and to actually perform real diplomacy. You just end up trying to vassalize or try to subjugate or try to push people into a position to where they succumb to you, they submit to you, they're subordinate to you. That is an unrealistic expectation that you're going to get every single person to just capitulate like that. At some point, you're going to have some form of rebellion. At some point, you're going to have somebody that says enough. And here we are. But yet you have a person like Donald J. Trump, President Donald J. Trump, mind you, where he says conquest. And that apparently is what our military is built for now, is conquest. Not defense, not defending our homeland, conquest. Well, I don't know about you. I might not be the greatest history scholar, but the last time any empire ever built a military for conquest, they ended up dying. That empire doesn't last. Empires have historically always fallen apart. Usually because they overtax, they overwar, they destroy the rights of their own people, and the overall structure does nothing to actually serve the people. It does everything to serve the people in power. This is a problem. So when you see things like this, and you hear a man that whimsically talks about the ending of a civilization and conquest, and the idea that like, oh, we're still gonna fight you. That's not a person that's actually looking for a deal. That's a person that's looking for your head. I think we ought to be well aware of that, because even if it is just talk, the sentiment is there. The idea is there. It exists. And we ought to expect better from people that are supposed to go forth and represent us, the American people. But we ourselves cannot forget about our role as the American people. Again, Benjamin Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it, right? Which implies that the average person, the American, has a responsibility of maintaining our government, not just the people we put forth, because they knew that those people become destructive of their means. So not to get off on a little tangent, but I think it's very important to recognize what exactly is going on here and the type of mentality we have and how far divorced it is from the country that we were intended to have. So moving forward, I want to, let's see, is this the one? Yeah, so I do want to hit on an article here that actually kind of carries forth some of this real quick. I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time on this because we did just kind of go through some of this. But I think it is important to kind of get a little bit of extra perspective. This article here is also by Dave DeCamp, who does a great job. If you guys haven't gone over to check out some of the writing and the articles and a lot of the work they do at antiwar.com, they really do a great job, as well as over at the Libertarian Institute. I highly recommend taking some time to go and to check out what it is that they have going on there. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but Dave DeCamp goes to write, President Trump said in a post on Truth Social on Thursday night that the U.S. military would remain near Iran, prepared to take action until all agreement is reached, and that it was ready for its next conquest, a warning that comes amid a very shaky ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. Again, I'm very skeptical whether there's anything there at all. I just think that given the patterns, I just think it's another ruse. If I was Iran, if I was anybody else, I would be extremely trepidatious and I would be extremely skeptical of anything that the U.S. federal government has to say, considering the fact that a majority of the people that they've attempted to deal with, they've basically murdered, right? And it's not just them, it's Israel. And so when you look at the situation in the Middle East, when all of your negotiators end up dead, I think that's a pretty good pattern. You're cementing a pattern here. And any other country that has a quarrel or a quip with the United States ought to take note and go in with an extreme amount of trepidation. So moving on. All U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel with additional ammunition, weaponry, yada, yada. We just went over that. The president had remarked. Trump added that the shooting starts again, it would be bigger and better, stronger. Anyone has seen before. He added that. In the meantime, military essentially going over the conquest thing again. The president's post comes amid uncertainty over the ceasefire as Israel continues to pound Lebanon with airstrikes, despite the U.S. initially agreeing to the truce that would include an end to the Israeli attacks on the country. At the moment, it does not appear that a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is holding. I would agree with that. I don't think there's really any ceasefire in place, if we're being honest. I don't know that there's really anything binding either side from not striking each other. I think it's just this really weird moment of tension overall. But Iranian officials have suggested that if a ceasefire isn't reached in Lebanon, then the Iranian attacks on U.S. bases and interests in the region could restart. So, look, I mean, they've pretty much set a line. If Israel doesn't come to heel, and they don't stop doing what they're doing, look, I mean, Israel's going to get pounded, and our stuff is going to get hammered again too. So this is where they're at. The U.S. in no way can escape from the consequences of a ceasefire that ends without the results favored by Iran and the resistance. And an unnamed Iranian official told Iran's Tusim news agency. Therefore, if the temporary ceasefire terminates due to violations by the other party, the U.S. or Israel, or because Iran and the resistance cannot reach a favorable agreement in an acceptable time frame for us, the U.S.'s interest across the region will surely be set to fire, just like the pre-ceasefire days. That's pretty strong wording. I mean, they're not parsing words. And look, if this was different, you know, we would have seen something similar to like the 12-day war situation, which really this is just a continuation of that. That war never stopped. We're just seeing the continuation of this. And so as a result, we're getting this situation to where they're saying, hey, look, like it's by our will and our will alone that we're not hitting anything of yours. We can start that up any given time, any given day, any given hour of any given minute. And there's nothing you can do about that. We will pound you. We will strike you. We will cripple your ability in this region. And look, regardless of what anybody wants to say, they have done a pretty doggone good job of hitting a bunch of our stuff. We have birds down. We've lost people. Critical installations have been hit. You can write this off all you want. You can talk about how strong and how mighty the U.S. military is, and you can go to a point of saying that to where you can ignore the fact that Iran has been able to successfully hit, target, and destroy assets of ours and people of ours and installations of ours. But to do so, I think, is extremely, extremely arrogant and is extremely hubris-filled. And that type of thing is a mistake that will compile more and more and more as time goes on. I have no doubt that we do have a very strong and capable military. But the idea that you cannot be touched, that there's this idea of invincibility, that you can never be affected whatsoever, I think is absolutely preposterous. And this is the type of mentality, unfortunately, that the Trump administration is going forward with every single day. And as a result, we lose a little bit more with each day that goes by. All for a war of choice, a war of aggression, and one that, mind you, is both illegal and unconstitutional. I don't make the rules. This is just what our founders have said. And so therefore, the lack of being able to adhere to the very principles and tenets and the foundation that our founders set before us, I mean, is criminal practically in and of itself. But moving on, because we do have quite a bit to get through here, I think that paints a very interesting picture. Did not mean to bring that up again. I have one other one. So I do want to come back over here for just a moment. And where is it? Deadly Israeli strikes continue as Lebanon reels. I just realized that I read that whole thing and I did not put it up, which I have to get better at that. There we go. So that is my bad. You guys were just sitting there watching me talk. Sorry about that. Israel continued with its attacks on Lebanon today, following by far the single deadliest day in the war on Wednesday, in which at least 254 people were killed and well over 1,100. Okay, so it wasn't a couple thousand. That was my fault. 1,100 others were wounded. Lebanon has declared a national day of mourning today as they continue to search for survivors in the rubble. Look, you guys can go up and you guys can go and you can watch some of the videos coming out of Lebanon. It is absolutely heartbreaking. There's one in particular where there's I think a father and daughter that are walking through, and there's a large explosion that occurs, and they are just beside themselves. There's also a video where you just see an ungodly amount of ordnance come down and just obliterate like several blocks of an area in Beirut. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. There's no other way to put it. And again, this is status quo. This is the way that the Israeli regime operates. This is the way that they've always operated. These people don't care about human life. I'll be honest. Like, if you're not Israeli, they don't care about your life. And even in Israeli culture, I mean, there's subcategories there, right? If you live in Israel, it's pretty well documented that if you're not if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim or whatever, you're not in the same category as other Israelis. That's just a fact. And when you look at the way that they treat people on a regular basis, their neighbors, people around them, you look at all of the fighting that they do with everybody else, none of this should surprise you. This is a pattern. This is a pattern that ultimately, as many people have said, will more than likely lead to Israel's own destruction because they don't really know how to stop. A lot of people have said that they're, drunk on the blood of people that they kill. I believe that. I really do. Unless there's something drastic that changes within their government, it's unacceptable. And you look at something like what happens in Lebanon, like what happened yesterday, and you look at the death and the destruction and the chaos that they bring to every region they bring, or that they go to. It's horrendous. The amount of human rights violations, the amount of crime or criminal acts that they have perpetrated against other human beings is reprehensible, up to and including that people recently have been actually outspokenly likening the Israeli regime to the Nazis, right? I mean, how bad do you have to be compared to the people that supposedly your ancestors escaped from, right? Now, there's a whole big debate about that, and I'll leave you guys to have that discussion. But it's really glaring when you have this type of behavior. And there's no other way to put it other than the fact that they are sanitizing an area. That is what this is. They're sanitizing an area. They're trying to cleanse this area. It's not about bringing security. It's not about bringing stability. They want these areas sanitized, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's the West Bank, whether it's anywhere. Gaza, they are sanitizing these areas. That's a fact. It's well documented. This is what they do. And they don't care who they have to kill, maim, destroy in order to achieve their goal. Going forward, recovering potential survivors from yesterday's attack are greatly complicated by the fact that attacks aren't over, with the multiple Israeli strikes reported today, particular across southern Lebanon, where a number of additional people have been killed. Largest attack so far was reported in Saraya, where an attack on a residential building killed at least 10 people, including women and children. An attack on Abbasiyah killed at least 7 more civilians and wounded a number of others. Look, I mean, man, it's reprehensible. And how anybody can stop, how anybody can sit here and condone anything like this. I mean, this isn't accidental, right? Like you see these people that sit there and they try and walk the stuff back and they try and say, oh, it's an accident, it's an accident. An accident is once or twice or maybe a handful of times, like, look, maybe it is bad intelligence. No, this is a pattern. This is a pattern of sanitizing. You don't do that. You don't have back-to-back accidents like this every single day after day after day, year after year after year. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. So it is insane. And we have, unfortunately, a government that not only condones this, but funds and supports it. And we are starting to at least utilize the same rhetoric that the Israeli government is. And it does beg to question, at what point does that rhetoric become action? At what point do you have these people become so convinced of these things that they become action? So, man, it is just, it's sad, man. It's super sad. So let's see. Jay, thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Great to have you. I do shows every Thursday and Saturday right now, typically around 1700. So great to have you. Great to have you a part of the discussion. I don't always look for people to agree with me, but really just to be involved in the conversations in various topics that I bring up. So thank you so much for joining. It's great. Thank you so much. So moving on, there is another point here. So now that we've gone through some of this stuff, there's a few other interesting things that I think will pique your interest before we start to round off the show here. So we have this one by Disclosed TV. Who some of you may follow them on Twitter or Instagram or some of these other outlets or social media sites. But I thought this was pretty interesting. This has kind of been in the news recently, where automatic registration for U.S. military draft eligible men to begin in December. Essentially, they have a summary here, which I'll kind of go through. Starting in December 2026, eligible young men in the United States will be automatically registered for the military draft without any action or consent required on their part. If some of you guys have been with me from the very beginning, I've done episodes pertaining to war, the draft, and a bunch of issues surrounding that. What I'll try and do is once everything's uploaded, I'll try and go back and I can link some of those for you, so you can go back and you can watch those episodes about the draft. Needless to say, when it comes to the draft, there's some pretty constitutionally questionable situations there, and some pretty morally questionable situations there as it pertains to the draft. But again, I have an episode on that that elaborates on that a little bit more. I just kind of want to go through this here for you guys, just to let you know kind of what is being considered. So the selective service system will integrate directly in with the federal data sources to enroll males aged 18 through 25, again, without your consent. This mandatory automatic registration was mandated by the fiscal year of 2026. The NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, signed into law by President Donald J. Trump in December of 2025. Policy ends decades of self-registration. So you used to be able to register yourself, up to and including picking, I believe, what branch of service you would prefer to go into if it did happen. So it's taking some autonomy away from you, and it's taking your consent away from you. Previously, nearly all male U.S. citizens and immigrants had to register themselves within 30 days of turning 18. Failure to comply violated the Military Selective Service Act and carried penalties, including fines up to $25,000 or $250,000, up to 5 years in prison, and ineligibility for federal student aid, jobs, and other benefits. So basically, look, if you don't allow yourself to be used by the state, if the state deems it to be necessary, they're basically going to go through and just thrash your entire life, and you don't have a say. So you're a criminal, you're a degenerate. That is, they're not saying it necessarily in that. They're being a little bit more eloquent, but they don't think that highly of you. Registration rates have already declined sharply since the option was removed from federal student loan applications in 2022. I wonder why. Maybe people are sick of war, perhaps. The new system simplifies compliance. Wow. That, never thought I'd see that one in the same sentence. The new system simplifies compliance. Yikes. That is, give me 1 minute. It's simplifying compliance. So we're making it easier for you to comply, which means we're just taking more stuff away from you to be able to have a say. And we're making sure that you don't have a choice in this. Wow. But here's the plus side. It cuts costs, redirects the agency's roughly $30,000 annual budget away from education and advertising campaigns towards readiness and mobilization planning. My goodness, how fortunate are we? Liberty reigns, people. Women, however, remain fully exempt. So, good job. Way to go. The Selective Service System was created in 1917. The United States has not activated the draft since the Vietnam War ended in 1973 and has relied solely on volunteers since then. But boy, they really don't want you to escape a meat grinder if it comes. Let me tell you. I don't know about you, but God dang it, man. That is one of the things of all time. I'm still like trying to wrap my head around essentially the whole simplifies compliance. Man, I'll be honest with you. I've seen a lot of things going through this stuff. I've taken a lot of constitutional history courses and constitutional courses and stuff like that, and I've seen a lot of the rhetoric that's come out in the long time since before we were a country up to present day, and simplifying compliance. That's a new one. That's a new one on me. That stuff is freaking. That is some Orwellian shit. Pardon my language, but that is, wow. I hope their mothers are proud. Whoever in the government was like, we're just gonna take it off. We're just gonna take the option away. Not a big deal. Anyways, reeling from our madness here after reading such an article, we're going to move on to another one that hopefully, all of you are fully on board with. This one is by the Libertarian Institute, by Joseph Solis Mullen. I will pull this up here so then that way we all can look at this. Hopefully I didn't make the mistake last time too of forgetting to pull that last one up. I got to get better at doing that. I mean, it really is a me problem. But if I forget to do that, I really apologize. I do try to put, sometimes I forget also, I do try to put all of these articles down below so you guys and gals can actually go back and read these for yourselves. But if I do forget to pull it up, just yell at me. Say, hey man, stop being a dunce, pull it up, and I'll go back and I'll bring it up. A $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget. So, hey, we got big news, everybody. All right. We have massive news. Not only are we going to make the Selective Service like totally non-compliant proof, right? So you can't not comply. Where they're actually making it easier to comply is what they're doing, right? They're making it easier to comply and for you to fall in line. So now that we have this situation, now we're asking for that $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget, and I'm here to tell you Like, if you guys don't pay these in taxes, if you don't like this, well, I mean, your names might go to the front of that list. You're not very American, I have to say. Of course, hopefully most people understand my sarcasm. I'm waiting for the day that somebody comes by and they have an absolute freaking meltdown. But look, it's implied sarcasm, everybody. But let's get into the article and let's have a small conversation about this. So Joseph Solis-Mullen goes on to talk about this $1.5 trillion. For anyone who's been paying attention to the metastasizing national debt, which is, oh boy, if you haven't seen the national debt at this point, I don't know what to tell you. You're living under a rock, Sonny. The recklessness that has defined Washington for the past 2 decades, the latest proposal from the Trump administration can be met only by a mixture of disgust and grim predictability. Indeed, at a time of record debt and deficits, the White House has floated a $1.5 trillion military budget for the fiscal year of 2027, a proposal more likely than not to find its way into the next National Defense Authorization Act, otherwise known as the NDAA. The wonderful bane of liberty that we have in our existence, along with things like the Patriot Act and so many other things. But wait, there's more. It's a prospect that should terrify every American taxpayer, but like I said, if you are one of those dissenting opinions, well, either you or your children are going to go right to the front of that line of the selective service. I'm probably sure they track those things too, considering the fact that this government has become very accustomed to not liking dissent, especially if you talk about the wrong people or the wrong things for that matter. For context, the most recent NDAA was already approaching $1 trillion. This was supplemented when the Pentagon subsequently received additional funds tucked into the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. My goodness, how can we ever forget that dumpster fire? I'm sure that's not backfiring at all. I'm sure we're seeing overwhelming amounts of prosperity from that. I'll leave you guys to your thoughts on that one. I'm not a fan. Let's put it that way. And we've covered that. I had my wonderful friend and economist, Thomas Edlemon. We've talked about it ad nauseum. And if you go back to some of the OG episodes that I did, the original episodes that I did, you can see some of the discussions and some of our opinions as it pertains to the Big Beautiful Bill. So I would encourage everybody to do that as well if you're interested to see what the perspective is there. Reconciliation package that rammed through hundreds of billions of dollars in new military spending. So we'll skip down here a little bit. If the next NDAA truly reaches $1.5 trillion total military-related spending, including nuclear maintenance and veterans care, would approach $3 trillion annually. I hope you guys are ready to pay into $3 trillion annually. Boy, I'm here to tell you, the future is looking bright. Not a fan. Got a lot of questions. Some of them I may be able to answer myself, but it's not looking good. Not looking good. And as he continues to go on to say, this is a wartime level share of GDP, far exceeding that of any other nation on earth. It amounts to billions of dollars every day, hundreds of millions every hour, spent on planes, bombs, bases, and contractors. And for what? Not for the defense of the American homeland, which geopolitical developments and geography have long made the safest great power in recorded history, rather the staggering sum sustained global empire of bases, endless interventions, and perpetual search for the next threat to justify the last. And as we saw in the wonderful, ever benevolent President Donald J. Trump's recent post that I just brought up, conquest, because that's what our military is for now. It's certainly not a constitutional military, and it is certainly not one of a republic, but we are empire building, and conquest is the name of the game. You guys obviously can go on to read some of the rest of this, I wanted to give you kind of a preview of this because, look, I don't think many people need much more elaboration on the fact of why $3 trillion annually is probably a very suboptimal thing when it comes to our pocketbooks, our paychecks, just being able to live day to day. I mean, we already have things that are so horrendously strained at this point that, they just look at all these things and they're just like, well, you can give more. So why not? We know you have a mortgage to pay. And we certainly understand that you have those pesky hospital bills and perhaps student loans and maybe even car insurance or certain debts. But your primary debt is to the good old USA and the War Department, because warfare is the number one concern of the U.S. federal government. And it is not the number one concern of the U.S. federal government for your well-being, for your standard of living, and your ability to just exist. That's a you problem, not a federal government problem, which in some cases, yeah, they're probably not wrong. But at the same time, I don't think necessarily spending ourselves into a road of ruin is probably the most effective way of, one, quelling dissent at home, but also, two, trying to stabilize things so that way you actually have the ability to make it the next 50, 100, 150 years. Suboptimal at best, I would say. And so we're facing a lot of different issues. And when I have Rebecca Whiting back on, who is the chair of the LPMN, and also somebody who is running for office as well, hopefully we'll be able to elaborate on some of these things also on Saturday. So I hope you guys and gals come back on Saturday to see that episode, because I'm really looking forward to that. We're seeing ultimately, I think, to kind of get away from some of my sarcasm and ground it back down to reality, I think we are seeing a power paradigm shift. I really do. I think that things are, I think there's a lot of tells. And I am somebody who I love my country. I love what our country was founded on. I love the Constitution. I love the principles and the values and the morals that our founders built this country on, right? I think they're great things. I think to a country, they are very, very unique things. And I think we've had a very unique opportunity. But I would be remiss and I would be lying if I said that this opportunity and these things are not being squandered. And not only are they being squandered, but they're being actively destroyed. They've been actively being destroyed, I should say, for decades. This is not something that's just started recently. It has been eroded over decades, if not probably the past century, if we're being completely honest. And that terrifies me in some ways, because it paints a very grim picture of what the future potentially holds. But there is hope. There is hope in the fact that I think more people are waking up ever than probably in the last 20 years. I think you're seeing a lot more people that are starting to question things again. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, that more and more people are going to start coming to this realization that, hey, something really is not right here. We can't continue to go in the same way that we are right now. We can't continue to sustain the same level of, the same level of repetition, of insanity, of continuing to do the same thing and kicking the can down the road. The accountability starts with us. And as I was talking about Benjamin Franklin's quote, a republic, if you can keep it, again, I have to emphasize that it's not, he wasn't talking to the elected representative. He wasn't talking to the president. He wasn't talking about the people that we put forth. Yes, that is a part of it. But he's talking about us. We are stewards of our republic, or at least what might even be left of it. I would argue we have the principles and we have the foundation blueprints. I'm not so sure about the republic anymore. But we are the ultimate decider of where this stuff goes, right? We as the people, and we have to be able to find common ground. We have to be able to find common footing and come together and to do these things. Otherwise, you won't have to worry about really trying to change what already is. At that point, you're almost just going to have to let it fall and fail before you can kind of pick up and figure out all of these different things. But I think that there's a lot of good people still. I think that there's a lot of people who want to see something change, and they're out there. There's a lot of different groups. The American Liberty Caucus is one of them. If you're looking for a home and you're looking to try and get involved, go and check out the American Liberty Caucus. I will throw down links. There's a lot of liberty-minded individuals there. We have differences of opinion. We have, we're all pretty along the same line when it comes to liberty. We're very liberty-oriented people. And we really want to try and foster something that's bigger than ourselves, something that's going to set something up better for the future and for our posterity. So we don't have a choice to not necessarily be involved to some degree. There's always a choice. But when it comes down to things that are going to impact you every single day and you're not getting involved, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. There's a saying, and I hate the fact that I can't remember it or remember who it's by, but it might have been Rand. But if you don't take an interest in politics, politics will surely take an interest in you. And I do believe that. So we can either do it on our terms or we can do it not on our terms. So thank you, each and every one of you, for coming over to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. I am genuinely super appreciative of all the support, of all the new people that come by to say hello, to check out what I'm doing. Always feel free to leave a comment, a like, a share, a subscribe, whatever you feel is necessary, even if you have a difference of opinion. Let's put it down below. And I do the very best that I can to try and respond to all of the comments. I don't always do the best job, but I do try and give it the best effort that I can. Before we end off the show, I'm going to go through some comments here and try and respond to you guys and gals. And then we'll wrap it up. So Jay, that was cool, man. I subscribed. Hey, I really appreciate it. Big shout out to you. Thank you for coming and checking me out. I really appreciate you subscribing and watching. Hopefully in the next few episodes, you continue to like what I do here. I would strongly encourage to have you go back and check out some of the other content if you ever have some downtime. Certainly don't feel like you have to, but it'd be help you kind of get a sense of what the channel does here. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Gene the Machine, or Gene Wu, but I call him Gene the Machine. I've known him for a while. Very 1984. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, dude. I couldn't agree with you more. It is very 1984-esque. And I hope something changes. I think about it quite a bit, and I think about what are the possible solutions? And there's a lot of people that I think do try to take the time out of their day and try and come up with solutions. And that's where getting involved in groups really helps. And it's not just the United States, but in other places too. It's if you can get a few good minds together and you can start to think and plan and have important conversations, then you can find those solutions. So, but yeah, it is very 1984, man. So I'm just going to go up here. Let's see. Very interesting. So there's another one by Gene the Machine here. Very interesting. My view of Trump has gone down to zero because he is now acting as bad as everyone else. I feel sorry for the people of Iran who lived under a tyrant and are now attacked by one. And that's the thing. So one of the things that I will say, and thank you so much, Gene, for this other comment here. I've always held the idea that, look, you don't have to approve or you don't have to like the leader of another country. I don't think there's no requirement for that. But in the United States of America, we have a constitution. That constitution is very, very clearly defined. And you have a lot of people that really like to twist the words. They really like to twist the language, especially when it comes to the War Powers Resolution. And they try to do everything they can to wage an offensive war. There's no part in our Constitution, one, where the president can unilaterally go to war. There's nothing. There's nothing there. Congress has the sole authority to declare war. Okay. That is extremely important. Anything beyond that is considered unconstitutional. The only caveat to that is if we are attacked. If we are being attacked, the president has the ability to repel that attack. But that is it. He cannot chase him down. He can repel him, cannot chase him down. There's constitutional parameters here, right? And I do go over this in some of my previous episodes as well. I actually dedicate, I think, 2 or 3 episodes specifically talking about the War Powers Resolution, war powers in general, the authority of Congress and the authority of the president. And like I said, I'll go back and I'll try to find those exact ones and put them in the description below once this is uploaded. But it's very explicit, and it's very, very, the authorities are very much specific and delegated in a way to where the president does not become a king. He does not become a sole authority, and Congress has the initial say, the final say when it comes to declaring war. It's very important. So but it is terrible when you see stuff like this, but we can't just go and wage a war because we feel like, oh, this is what we have to do or whatever, because you open the door for so many other excuses to be like, well, we have to go to war now because if we don't go to war, then this is going to happen. So a lot of caveats. There's a lot of nuance to that conversation. But no, I agree with you. It's a terrible situation. It's the same thing as like down in Venezuela. It's the same thing anywhere. When you have people that are just so destructive of their own means that they abuse their own people, they hurt their own people, and it's not something anybody has to like or approve or agree on or whatever the case is. But then when you use that to justify violating our Constitution, violating our parameters, violating our principles, violating all of the things that our founders set forth to ensure we did not become like Great Britain that we separated from, then you become the very empire that our founders separated themselves from. You become the same abuse of government, and the pattern follows. It always follows. So there's a lot that goes behind that. I do have episodes specifically covering those things. So if you guys and gals are interested in that, I believe it's about halfway, might be in the first third of my episodes. I think I did those initially when I first started the podcast. So it's either the first third or it's about halfway through in my episodes. Go check those out. I hope you guys and gals will find those informative. And if you want me to do another follow-up episode on war powers, on the War Powers Resolution, and being able to talk about these things again, let me know. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put up a poll that you guys and gals can vote on, and you guys can let your voices be heard, whether or not you want me to do another follow-up on war powers, the War Powers Resolution, and other things like that. So I'll have that set up sometime this week, and I'll see what you guys and gals have to say, because your voice is important. So let's see here. Let's go down. Unfortunately, his decisions will result in a radical landslide in November. We may never recover. Yeah, man, it's going to be tenuous, BCP. It really is. I hate to say it. I think there's going to be, I will say this. I don't think it's actually going to be surprising to a lot of people. I think it's going to be tenuous. I think there's going to be a lot of, I think we're going to be in for a rough ride. No doubt, like even rougher than what we have now. But I don't think it should really surprise people when you have a person that really has not really gone through and achieved really anything they set out to do. And I think one of the very first things that really started to sink this administration and support for this administration was just the absolute blatant disregard and discarding of anything to do with Epstein. It was one of the big fundamental things. I think the border is right there too, but I think Epstein really was a hot button issue for a lot of people. And, when they just kept diverting and saying like, oh, there are no files, and then there are files, and then there's this doesn't exist, and if but now it does exist. And then you have Pam Bondi, who was just recently let go, who just constantly covered and covered and covered. Same with Dan Bongino, and you have Kash Patel and all of these people. And, you could just tell that these people are just full of crap. Look, I mean, the damage to the reputation that's done there and the damage for the trust of the American public. And look, that's just one major thing of a number of things that they should have just been home runs for these people, have just destroyed their reputation. I mean, I don't really know what to say about that other than the fact that I find that it's reprehensible. This has really just become extremely destructive of its means. You have a government that really is more interested in its own self-interest and its own ambitions than it is about finding truth, and it's about finding and holding people accountable, especially as it pertains to human trafficking, sex trafficking, the abuse victims, and a variety of other things, war in the border, and so many other outstanding issues that have not been addressed. And again, those are just three. The list is long. It not only leaves a lot to be desired, but it's just the lack of will or wanting to even get to the bottom of any of these things or to avoid any of these things. It's a self-inflicted wound, to say the least. So, but no, I don't think you're wrong. I think it's going to be very tenuous, and I think it's going to be a rough ride, BCP. So thank you for your comment. And then David said Saturday podcast with Rebecca Whiting will be great. I've had Rebecca on a few times. She's a wealth of knowledge, has a great personality. She's awesome, very liberty oriented. So if you want to hear what she has to say, she'll be on Saturday at 1700, and it should be a great show. I'm hoping I'm going to try and see if I can get Scott Horton back on the show sometime soon here, because I'd really like to pick his brain once again to hopefully hear what he has to say and get a lot of his input. So I'm going to be working on trying to get a few other people back on. And until then, thank you so much for coming out to the show, supporting me, and all the great stuff. You guys and gals really help this thing move along. You give me the gusto to continue doing this, and I really can't do it without you. So without further ado, thanks again. And I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of outro music. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at Saturday, 1700 Central Time on the Sentinels of Liberty podcast.